dive right in. I'm going to show you a whole bunch of different tools in here. Some of them have to do with markup, some of them are kind of in general. And so let's get going. Let me sneak over into Bluebeam. Here we go. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. I have kind of a random list of thoughts to go through that I created yesterday, and we'll see how it works out. Profiles is the first thing I wanted to talk about. When you are in Revu, you can set up your screen to look really any way you want. Your pull down menus are fixed, but you can open up different toolbars. You can open up panels on either side. So you can right click on any tool, open up any toolbar you want, or click at the bottom for customize, and you can create new toolbars, combine tools from different toolbars so that you can work faster and smarter. You can also go to either the left panel or the right panel. I'm over on the left-hand side right now. And if you right click in there, you can tell it to show any of the items that aren't open. So you could close an item on one side and open it on the other. You can right click on an item and tell it, oops, you can right click on an item and tell it to hide, and then you can show it on the other side. All of those will be saved into a profile by you going to profiles and then saving the profile. You can give your profile a name, and you can basically under manage profiles, you can export it, right? So the first thing you want to do if you're creating a custom one is to click add and add a custom profile. And then when you save it, you can use that profile. You also have the ability to export or import it. So you could create one for your office, for example. Okay, profiles are going to be important because later on in the markup list, columns can be saved to profiles and tool sets can be saved to profiles. Templates. One of the nice things about adding a page to a document is when I right click and go ahead and tell it to insert a blank page, I have a list here of templates. Right? And you can create your own template. The way you're going to do that, I'll show you in a second. But I have one in here that I called the MR Microsol Resources, RFI. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to put it in the initial spot, and there it is. So how do you create a template? Well, you create a new PDF, and then from the file pull down, new PDF from template, you can go ahead and save a file as a template, right? So that this will now appear in the template list. So that's kind of a nice way if you have to do submittals or RFIs or things of that sort on a regular basis to have that in the list. You can also pull templates out of that folder so they're not listed in there. I apologize today. I'm having vocal cord issues, so every once in a while I'll probably be clearing my throat, and I apologize in advance. Let me go ahead and delete that page. I'm going to right click on it and delete it because I want to show you a little tiny bit of JavaScript. If you have the extreme version of the software, you get the ability to create very fancy, and there goes the voice, some very fancy JavaScript programs that you can create stamps with, but you can do some very simple stuff with it as well, or more complex if you're smarter than I am. So from the document pull down, we have script. The scripts are listed down here at the bottom, and you can do lots of different things with them. For instance, here's one called flatten an email. If I go ahead and click the pencil to edit it, we'll see some of the script that's in there. So we have flatten and we have email. Notice as I hover over each of those, it tells me a little bit about what it's doing. So I said, oh, you know what? I insert these pages a lot in my file, so why don't I create my own? So here's one that I created by clicking the plus tool. And what I did was I said, well, you know, I'm inserting a page. So I started typing in a letter, right? So you can type in a letter to start with. And I typed in the letter I, and insert pages came up. As I hover on this, you'll notice that you get an entire list of what to do with that particular script. Just to keep things very simple, this script is going to insert in the initial position of 0 this file that I created. So that's pretty good. All I have to do is click on that, pick run, and that page is added. So real easy way to incorporate those sorts of repetitive items into the product by using scripting. Okay, PDF editing. Let me come over to this PDF here that I have open. Here, and I wanted to show you some PDF editing. One of the things you can do is you can capture content. So if you wanted to capture content that maybe you want to use as a symbol or for whatever particular reason from the edit pull down PDF content, I have the ability to do snapshot, right? And I can hold down my left button and drag a boundary around my content. And I now have that available if I right click and paste, right? So I now have that, and I could actually take that as now a markup symbol, right? It's going to be a markup symbol in my markup list. See if I can click on that, called a snapshot. And I could rename that to, that's down here in my markup list at the bottom. And I could rename that to whatever I want. Some other clever things that you can do with editing PDF is you can actually erase things if you don't like them. So if for whatever reason I didn't like some of this information here, I can come over to edit that PDF and I can cut content. So I can come over and just cut that out. Okay, not saying that you really want to do that, but you certainly can if you want to. Another thing is you can actually edit text as well. So I could change maybe the word of to to. So I could come over here to edit PDF content, and I could select, I could click edit text, and I could click right there, put in the letter T, take out the letter O, and finish, okay? So you not necessarily want to do this, but if you printed something out and you noticed a misspelling in there and you said, oh man, I don't want to print this whole thing again, you could go ahead through and do something like that. Okay, text in an area. Or in a dimension. With a linear dimension, let me go ahead and put one in, find one up here, here we go. Go ahead and click on that, pick here, and we'll just pick on the other side, okay? So with that finish, sometimes the text isn't really in a good location. If you hold down the Shift key first, you can drag the text to a new location. You can also do that in areas. So again, if you hold down the Shift key first, you can pick the text and move that to a different spot rather than accidentally dragging around the actual markup that you've got. Snapshots. Oh yeah, snapshots are pretty cool. So let's say I need to do, I have a question about this area here. So on my RFI page, I want to do a screen capture of this area. So from the edit pull down, I have a snapshot, and I could go ahead and build a rectangular area. And then I could go back to the other page, right click and pick paste. But I get all of this other stuff, right? I get these clouds and I get these areas and I get all of that. And that may not be exactly what I want. So how could I capture that stuff without all of the markups that I have in the file? One way would be to use layers. On the left, I've got layers, and I could put things on a layer. So for instance, I have ceramic tile on a layer that I could turn off. and you can create new layers over here, but that's also a lot of work. So how else could I do that? Well, in one of the classes I was teaching, I always talk about the Shift, the Control, and the Alt key. Always do something. So if something doesn't work, try the Shift key. If something doesn't work, try the Alt key. And in one of my classes, someone did the snapshot and didn't capture any of the underlying markups. And I was like, how did you do that? And they said, I don't know. So I've played with it a little bit, and I think I've figured it out. I'm going to try it again here. The snapshot shortcut is the letter G, right? So if I type the letter G, right, I can create a snapshot. And again, if I went back to that first page and clicked on that and right-clicked here and big paste, it would again capture all of the underlying markups. So what one of the students had done was they held down the Shift key and then they typed the shortcut, the letter G. So I held down the Shift key, type the letter G, do a screen capture, come back, right-click, pick paste, and a miracle. There are no markups that come along. And I was saying, wow, that's really cool. Why doesn't Bluebeam tell us that, right? So I've looked through every document on Bluebeam and I have not found that anywhere. So yeah, you can thank me for that at this point if you needed that. The other thing you can do, I'm not going to get into, let's say, flattening this particular document, but that would be something you might want to do. There is a feature, once you have this in place, if you want to start putting some callouts or other things on here, you don't necessarily want to move this around. Now, you could flatten the document, but that means that you haven't had time yet to fill in the date and other sorts of things. And so you could, at this point, right-click. And again, right-click is your friend. And one of the things that's in there is the lock capability. So with that locked, I'm selecting it, but I can't move it, right? So locking, you can lock all kinds of things so that they don't move around in your files. Okay, I was showing you a little bit about layers. Again, let me go back over to here. Let's say I wanted to create a layer called carpeting. If I click in layers, I can come up to the top here and I can tell it to add a new layer. I'll tell it to add a new layer after the one I have. I'll call it carpeting. Carpeting. Typing is not my specialty. It's not going to show because there's nothing on that layer yet, but I could select the carpeting, right-click, and under layer, I could put that on the carpeting layer. You can right-click on a layer and you can make that the markup layer. So for the next however many minutes or hours you're putting things in, they will automatically go on that layer. And then you can simply go back to the default layer when you're done. That's a nice feature. And again, it gives you the ability to control visibility of things. So those are layers. What else do I have? Subject and labels. Yes. So as you're putting things into your file, as you're putting in these markups, keep in mind that the most critical thing, as far as I'm concerned, is something called the subject. The subject here is going to be what shows up down here in the markup list on the bottom. And we are going to use that for sorting purposes. We are going to use that for linking maybe to Excel files. It's really, really very important. You can also access it from the top in the properties bar on the top left. So they kind of hide that under the little icon, but you have the subject there. You also have a label. So in many cases, when you put an area in or another kind of measurement in, it just says the length of the square footage. But again, a label is something that you can add to that. Okay, so text boxes. Let me close this down over here, this over here. Okay, so as you're placing text in a file, let's say I just use a call out and I'll put an arrow, drag down, and I'll just type something in like the word text. Okay. And then I might come up to the top and give a little bit of thickness to that box. Notice the box is kind of weirdly shaped. There is a feature that is in the 2018 and 2019 in the properties bar at the top, allowing you to resize the text. But you can also use the keyboard combination Alt-Z, and if you do Alt-Z, it will automatically resize the text box. So again, Alt-Z, and you are good to go with resizing your text box. Speaking of right-click menus and callouts, you have the ability with a callout to add additional leaders. So if I right-click on that, I have the ability to add another leader, right? And maybe I want to change this to loose wires. Okay, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to make the box a little bit bigger, and then I'm going to do the Alt-Z to resize it. If you put in multiple leaders, you can right-click on a leader and then delete that leader as well. Okay. Now, one of the things that we know that we can do with the software is we can put images in our file, right? And we can do that from the tool pull down and markups and images. But if we stick an image in, right? If we stick an image in the file and go over to images, and let's say I pick my loose wires, right? And then I do this to drop it in. Then I right-click on that and go to crop, right? It takes a lot of effort. And also, if I have more than one picture, there's going to be a lot of these pictures taking up screen space. So one thing that you can do with any markup is if you select the markup in the right-click menu is capture. And with capture, again, if your device has a camera, you can use that. Otherwise, you can do from file. And again, I can go back to those files, come back to my images, go ahead and click on that. And it will now attach this very small icon to the markup. And if I left click on that, you will see your images. And yes, if you export this file or you send this file to someone that doesn't have Bluebeam, during the flattening process, you can tell it to take those captures and add them as attachments so that the people can view that as well. Another right-click item I want to show you is being able to apply to multiple pages a stamp. So let me go ahead and open up a set I've got here. And let me go to the first page in this set. Okay, so maybe I would like to say that I've reviewed this file, but I don't want to have to go through every page in here and put that on there. Now, if I have the extreme version, I do have batch stamping, right? So I have batch stamp feature, but if I don't, I have another way to do that. So I will come up to the tools dropdown stamps, and I'll go ahead and pick my reviewed stamp. So I've got my reviewed, and I'll go ahead and place that in the file. Right? A little bit big, so I'll drag it down, make it a little bit smaller. Right? And that's on that page, but if I go to the next page, right, it's not there. So how do I get this on all of my pages? Well, if I select it and right-click, I have the apply at the bottom here, apply to all pages. Let me slide the view up a little bit, right-click, apply to all pages, and voila, didn't really have to do much. There it is, it's on every page, okay? Pretty easy. Let me close that. Okay, so that was applying stamps. Tool sets. Tool sets are over on my left-hand side. I'm going to click on the little tool. Tool sets are listed under the tool chest. And if I go down to manage tool sets, we can see the sets that we have. What you can do is you can create your own tool set by clicking Add and giving it a name. Whoops, I don't want to do that because my machine's going to get angry with me. Let me go ahead and cancel that and cancel that. So I've already created a tool set with my name on there. And if you've created a tool that you would like to use over and over again, or a markup rather that you want to use over and over again, you can simply right click on it and add to tool chest, right? So I can add that, let's say, to my tools. And now I have that call out available, right? So I've got that call out available. But maybe I don't want it always to look like that. Maybe I don't want 2 liters, and maybe I don't want it always to say loose wires. So how can I change that? Well, there are 2, oh, and the other thing is the look of this. So I apologize. If I click on the gear, most of the time when you first open up a tool set, it's going to look like this, which is great if you know what your tools are. But if you don't, or you have too many in there or you forget, you can click on that little gear and use detail. And then what it'll do is it'll give you this listing. So it'll give you the icon as well as the subject, the comment, and the label. There is a slider bar at the bottom. So as you're getting older, you, like me, and losing your eyesight, you can make these images larger or smaller. But if you want to switch out of property mode to drawing mode, or from what I call static to dynamic, you left click on the icon. And now I have the ability to place a call out with really whatever information I want in there. Of course, I can use the Alt-C to resize that. So you can very easily switch from property mode to dynamic or drawing mode by double clicking the icon, right? And that can really be for any one of these particular tools. Another thing that is important with tool sets is as you create a tool set, or when you've created it and want to, if you need to modify it, notice that you can have them in all profiles, or you can have them only in the current profile. So as I switch from one profile to another, my tool chest, my tool set will vanish. It's only really in the current one. I can click modify and tell it to show in all profiles. If you do that, just keep in mind that any tool set that's in all profiles cannot be deleted. So the X here is grayed out. So if you create a tool set that you don't want to display any longer, it won't delete if you've put it in all of your profiles. Okay. There is also a pretty neat little set up at the top called My Tools. Notice My Tools, all of the little icons have numbers related to them. So the number 1 is a marker. So I don't have to click any tool at all. All I'm going to do is type the number 1 on my keyboard, and I get that tool. Or I'll type the number 8, and I get a cloud with, I get a cloud, right? So there's my cloud number 8. Well, let's say I do more clouds than I do these markers. I can hold down my left button, drag that into the position, and now if I type the number 1, I'll get that. And if I type the number 2, I get my marker, okay? So My Tools is pretty cool. And if you do things on a fairly regular basis, that is something you can take advantage of. To get a tool up there, all you need to do is hold down your left button and just drag it up and into that section. Okay. Clouds. Speaking of clouds, here's an interesting little one that I run into every once in a while. Let's say you want to cloud an area, but you want to eliminate, let me go ahead and eliminate a few things actually while I'm at it. Let's say I want to not have part of the area look like part of my cloud boundary. So I'm going to create a large cloud boundary around here, and then I'll create a smaller one in the inside here. One of the things you can do with a boundary is if I go to my right side and properties, I can invert that inner boundary, right? So that's kind of a cool starting point, but maybe not quite as good as I would like to have it. So if I click that outer boundary, I can go ahead and create a fill for that, let's say, and maybe change the percentage a bit. Then I'll click on the inner boundary and change its fill color to white, right? And then take that down a little bit as well. So cool. So now I have a cloud with a cutout. If you are going to use this on a more regular basis, rather than having two separate clouds, what I might want to do is put see if I can select these two. Select this one and hold down my Shift key and select that one, and then right click and create a group. So I now have a single markup, right? So I've got this single markup that I can use. If I decide that I need to change part of the inner part of that cloud, I can hold down the Alt key and I can select that inner part. So I could move that to a different location, or I could grab a corner and drag the shape, right? So the Alt key will allow you to sneak inside of that group. Okay. Sequenced markups. So let's say I would like to put in a markup that will sequence. So I'll start with a piece of text. I'll come up to text. I'll pick a spot and I'll click the number 1 and press escape. I'll do an Alt Z. And now I'm going to change the shape to a circle and give it a little, well, it's got some thickness, okay? I'm going to go ahead and pick this, right click, and I'm going to add that to my tool chest. So now down here, I've got this text box, right? And it's just a text box. But what if I would like this text box to be a sequence? Well, what I can do is I can right click on that, and I have an option called sequence. I can pick define. I can choose the style. It can be a number or could be letters. I could set a prefix or a suffix. I can start with a certain number and I can increment by a certain number. Do I want to reset per document or per page? Do I want to renumber automatically when it's deleted? These can all be edited afterwards as well. So I'll pick OK. And now when I place this in the file, you'll notice that I get a sequence. And if I were to choose the first one and delete it, they will renumber. So that's kind of a neat little feature that's only available from the tool set, as far as I know, being able to do that by right-clicking. Remember, right-clicking is your friend. Legends. I've got a bunch of things on here. Some people like legends, some people don't. Some people don't even know what a legend is. So let me show you what a legend is. I'm going to come down to my markup list. I'm going to click on carpeting. I'm going to hold down my my control key, click on ceramic tile, and I'm going to come down and right click on length measurement. I am going to, hold down my shift key and pick it. With those three selected, now I'm going to right click and say, I'm going to create a new legend. So there's my new legend. Let me find a spot where there's some stuff in the file, and I will place that in there. Legends have properties. So if I come over to the gear on the right, I can click on Edit Columns, and I can choose what columns I want to have included. You can also set a width for a box on there. Anyway, these things are dynamic. So if I were to come up and let's see, pick my carpeting and hold down the shift key, the control key, and make a copy of that, you'll see that my carpeting will update. I'll hold down and drag, right? And you'll see that that is dynamically updating. So those are legends. Use them or not. It's up to you. It's in there. What else have I got? Markup list, custom columns. Oh yeah, so I wanted to show you a couple of things in markup list, custom columns. One is I've created this one called responsibility. So if I double click on that, I get a drop down, Dan, Roger, Reid. If I double click on ceramic, I get Bill, Jim, and Reid. So why do I get different responsibilities? Again, it has to do with the subject and the custom markup. So if I come to markups, drop down, manage columns, custom columns. I've created a whole bunch of them, but one is called responsibility. So I'll go ahead and click modify on that, and that is a choice column, right? Or a choice type. So a choice type allows you to choose a subject and pair that to an item. So for the items, I'm using the names of the people that need to review those, and I'm putting in a subject. If I put in a specific subject, I am limiting the person to just that particular subject. So I can work on any subject, but these other people can only work on specific subjects, okay? Another thing that you can customize is status. So status, you can come over to the little sliders and click Manage Status. And statuses have state models. So there's a review model and a migration model. But you can always create additional models if you want, and you can create any kinds of states. So if accepted, rejected, canceled, completed, none isn't what you need something, you know, totally different, you can go ahead and create a totally new state. Another thing that is pretty nice is that you can pick on any one of these states and pick modify, and you can assign a color to it. So as a markup in your file has its status changed, its color will change as well. So you'll know that you've actually, that's actually been picked up. Whoop, I've got a box open. It doesn't like me. I'm gonna go ahead and close that. I have a few seconds left. Oh, and I wanted to show you one last thing, and that is the fact that you have a web browser available to you right here inside of Bluebeam. At the top of the screen, if I go ahead and right-click on the bar at the top where the files that are open are, one of the items I have is a web tab. It defaults to the Bluebeam web tab, but I could do a shameless plug for Microsol. I'm somewhere else. Where did I go? Microsol resources.com, right? And it'll take me there. So you can actually browse right from inside of Revu if you want.